Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome everyone. We're back again, Off the Record, podcast by Dailynaseehateam. And today, inshallah, we're going to be speaking about a subject which is not often spoken about. We're going to, inshallah, learn a couple of things as well about particular issues within the community. And with us, we have a special guest who's going to be speaking about this. We have Suleiman Bey from Dawatal Islam in Suit Hill, which is where we're having this podcast. Suleiman Bey is a chairman of the masjid, or as he likes to say, a volunteer of the masjid, and he oversees the activities of the masjid. Do you want to give us a bit more detail about your background, your role, and the masjid as well, Suleiman Bey?
Yeah. Firstly, Jazakallah for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak to you guys and the team, and really appreciate the efforts that Dailynaseehateam are doing, and may Allah Ta'ala accept all the efforts as well.
I mean, yeah.
In terms of my role, alhamdulillah, I've been involved in the masjid committee now for about 12 years, possibly longer. And the way we got involved, or I got involved, was when the masjid was being built around about 15 years ago, in 2005, 15, 16 years ago. We were youngsters then, 15, 16, and we'd come in whilst the elders were working, because the masjid was predominantly built, or a lot of effort was made by the elders in the community. So they got us involved in terms of whenever there was a delivery, we'd go and help out and things like that. And alhamdulillah, through that connection has remained. There's a group of us, about 5-6 of us, that made a pledge that every Thursday we'd clean the masjid.
Oh wow, mashallah.
And alhamdulillah, that's kind of continued. So alhamdulillah, from that, it's kind of developed, and elders put us in the committee as a starting role, and then secretary, and these different roles. Alhamdulillah, I see it as a great benefit that Allah has chosen me and given me the opportunity to kind of do some khidmat of the masjid, khidmat of the community, really. Then that's what I would say.
Yeah, mashallah. So you mentioned being involved in the masjid from a very young age, right? So part of the podcast, well, this particular podcast is something we're going to kind of touch upon a little bit later, is youth. But what was it that inspired you to get involved with the masjid? That's such, 15, 16, that's high school age, year 8, 9 maybe, year 10 even.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, like I said, Suit Hill, I've lived all my life up Suit Hill. So we saw the masjid when we had 2 houses, and the difficulty that we had. There was no Jummah. And then we saw the difficulties that the community had in terms of building the masjid or getting it up and running. So there was a lot of times when it was kind of stop-start because of funding, because of contractors and things like that. In terms of inspiration, it was these elders are the inspiration. My late father was involved in the masjid. And these elders kind of, what they did is they showed us a lot of love. And whenever we came in, they'd always kind of appreciate us coming in. And I think it will probably follow on to when we talk about the youth. And that's kind of really stuck by. And alhamdulillah, Allah Ta'ala has kept us connected to the masjid. And I've seen numerous instances, Daniel, where people have been involved and for a year or two, and then you won't see him again. So I pray that Allah Ta'ala keeps me and everyone connected to the masjid in some kind of capacity. And that's basically how we started and where we are now. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Okay. So some of the things we're going to speak about in this podcast is obviously the roles of a masjid, right? And you mentioned your role and the kind of things that you do. Obviously, with that you have committees, you have imams, you have various different roles within a masjid, right? So I want to understand how a masjid, how does it progress? How does it work? What are the kind of things involved in the day-to-day runnings of a masjid in this day and age?
Well, day to day, you have the imams that carry out the role of praying namaz, praying salah 5 times a day. And you've got in terms of the madrasa system as well, where we've got a head teacher, a number of ustads, appas as well, that kind of carry out the madrasa function. In terms of where we come in as kind of committee members or volunteers, is we recently became a charity about 3 years ago. So we've got a structure in place where there's a number of trustees that are elected at a meeting, an AGM, and we oversee the masjid activities. It can be easy to kind of just let things drift.
Yeah.
And you know what? Let masjid run the 5 times namaz.
Yeah.
People come in, go. But where I think we're a bit different here is that we want to make a difference.
Okay.
You know, we want to do things to help people. And inshallah we'll come on to that as well. But it's really, that's kind of the general structure, where you've got the imams who we seek mashura from. We've got 3 imams here, and then they kind of oversee the masjid function, like I said, madrasa. Then you've got us guys kind of overseeing things, you know, paying the bills, administration, you know, if there's maintenance side, those kind of things.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Again, interesting point you mentioned about the madrasa and how you do things differently as well. So one of the things that we tend to hear about madrasas is their focal point and how things should be different. So we hear things like certain madrasas focus too much on just, or focus not too much, but solely on things like prayer, which again is very important. But is it time that we focus on other things as well besides prayer, such as social injustice, you know, caring for the poor, such as, you know, day-to-day issues of our community and things that they face? And you know, what are your thoughts on those types of activities or roles being taken place from a point, you know, from the perspective of madrasa?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, one thing is the masjid, and the one thing is the madrasa. So the madrasa, generally, the responsibility, we kind of give that to the head teacher, but we don't just let him just, you know, just carry out the daily functions, like you say, focusing on tajweed and kitabs and things like that. One of the examples is a couple of years ago, just pre-COVID, we went up to the care home, and we give out some gifts there.
Okay,
and we took some students there just to show them a different side of the madrasa. Recently, we've got in touch with the Forget Me Not Children's Hospice.
Okay, yeah.
We've built up some links with a sister that works there to kind of work on some fundraising for them as well. In addition to that, we enter football tournaments, done charity events for Ummah welfare. So whatever we can do a bit differently, we've taken them out on trips, you know, which we wouldn't normally do back in our days.
Yeah. I certainly never went on a trip back in the day.
I don't remember anything. The holidays system is more similar to school.
Okay.
So there's no problems in terms of, you know, going on holidays and things like that with parents. So it's kind of, we're trying, and it's a continuous cycle of improvement. That's all we strive to do in terms of madrasa. In terms of masjid, Danielle, alhamdulillah, over the last, I'd say, 3 to 4 years, we've kind of developed the outreach side, the offer, you know, quite greatly. If we go back to COVID, we had the food bank, which we set up, which helped loads of people. We've developed links with different organisations, the council, Macmillan, done so many different things, and I think that's the way forward, because these organisations are desperate for help and desperate to work with masjids as well, and it's a way of giving dawah, and it's a way of kind of empowering people that are not connected to the masjid, and they, you know, and they see the masjid in a different light. That, you know what, it's not just about coming to the masjid. Yes, it's for us, no doubt about that, but there's a lot more to the masjid than that. Coming in, just having a chat, you know, games nights for the youngsters.
Okay, well,
you know, through the partnership that we have with the community centre, we had a FIFA night recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So just trying to do different things, but always having that focus of dawah. Yeah. Especially with our youngsters. Yeah. And that's kind of, I like to think that we're a bit different, but alhamdulillah, a lot of masjids, all the masjids around here make a lot of effort. It's about trying to kind of maintain that and improve on that.
Yeah. Okay, alhamdulillah, that's some things I didn't know myself. You know, the activities that you do, that's FIFA night. But again, you know, reaffirming that point where we're doing these activities, or you're doing these activities, but also thinking about the deen and dawah, and always kind of bringing it back to the, you know, the actual purpose, which is deen and dawah, right? You touched upon the youth. So again, this was something that we want to try and address. So we hear as well things like the youth don't feel comfortable coming to the masjid, or they don't feel welcomed in the masjid is a common thing that we tend to hear. My personal opinion, I think there is some truth to that, but also on the other hand, we also have youth who just generally have never really made the effort either. So how do we address that? How do we address, firstly, I guess the first thing is this side of people or youth who don't feel welcomed in the masjid, which again is something that again it's quite bizarre to bizarre thing to hear, right? Because a masjid should be a place where anyone's feeling welcome, especially our youth, because they're our next generation. But then on the other hand, we have the youth who haven't really tried or made that effort in the first place. So I guess there's two sides to this, and how is Dawatal Islam and the masjid in general try to address both of these things, and what's been done for the youth in that sense?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing is that culture, where the elders, even back when we were a bit younger, when we did something wrong, the elders would kind of pull us up on it, naturally, whether we were outside, inside the masjid. So one thing is culture, where it's still there, where if someone's come in and a young lad's making some noise in the masjid, the chances are an elder might say, you know what, you're making too much noise. Now, that's very difficult to avoid. But what we have done, again, over the last, I'd say about 12 months, is we partnered up last summer with the Huddersfield Town Foundation. And we put on a football tournament. Now, off the back of that, the youngsters that from Sutil that were involved in that football tournament and helped in different ways, they've kind of kept that connection with us. So from that, then we took them on to these walks that we did. From that, we asked them what they wanted. They said we wanted a sleepover, so we did a sleepover for them. From that came the FIFA night. So what we've learned is it's kind of showing them that muhabbat, showing them that sense of belonging. That this is your masjid. So quite often when they come in, they'll just sit in one corner. They'll be on the phones. They'll be there for hours. So I think that we kind of, the youngsters not a worry at this moment in time. We've got the odd few youngsters that unfortunately may be involved in drugs. And it's kind of trying to reach out to them. Going back to that point where some people who are just not going to come to the masjid. So there's a lot of work that's needed on that. But in general, I think just showing the youngsters a bit of love, a little bit of belonging, empowering them, asking them to volunteer when it's possible. I think we're onto something, because off the back of all that, we've created a Friday study circle class with Moni Abu Bakr Sufi. So these youngsters are attending on a regular basis, asking questions, about Masla, Masail, anything that they've got any doubts about. So just from that little bit of effort that we made through the football, I think sport can play a big part in general anyway. It's kind of developed, and we've got these linked with these 30 or 40 youngsters, aged about, I'd say, 14, 15 upwards. But I think in terms of it, just on a more general note, I think obviously the youngsters are the next generation. We have to focus on this. But in the same token, we should keep that focus on everyone.
Of course.
On the elders as well. Because a lot of these elders, they're isolated. Some are widowed, so we've got to keep the focus on everyone. And we had a discussion last week as well with Rabita. We had a program here as well, fantastically attended, where we had different focus groups for different age ranges. It was a really good concept. And at that point, even we said that, yes, the youngsters are key, and a lot of focus does go on them. In the same token, we can't lose our focus on the sisters. We can't lose focus on our elders. So the work, it'll continue. So we've got to continue looking at different ways to try and engage with people. We've sent invites out to ex-madrasa students and call them to like a youth night, where it wasn't a bayan. It was just to have a discussion in different groups about what do they want in the masjid. What can we do for you? What can they do for us? So it's about engaging. It's about taking time, and I think from that, inshallah, we can see the fruits of it now. In the same token, alhamdulillah, I mentioned that we've got 3 imams. Recently, we've appointed an imam, and part of that role is community development.
That's great.
Part of the role is kind of some hours have been set aside for community development, and we're hoping that we can use those hours with a focus on the youth, but with a strong focus on the youth, but focusing on everything else as well.
So this community development, what does that actually entail? Like, how does that role actually work?
It's a different role. Like I say,
it's something new.
It's something that I've been quite strong on for a while, that obviously imams do a great job in terms of leading namaz and showing that punctuality in terms of being on the musalla, when being a point of contact, that kind of thing. But I think the community development, because it's such a new role, kind of gauge how it goes really, and see how we can use it. Going out to see youngsters and using that time and getting paid for it as well.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these individuals volunteer their time, and it's not right.
Sure.
Sometimes it's okay.
Yeah,
they've got family, kids,
yeah,
like you guys do. You guys do a fantastic job. But I just think that it's something that as an area we could do better on. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, alhamdulillah. In terms of these roles and once still focusing on the youth specifically, if you don't mind me asking, what's the youngest age that you have, within the committee or within any of these roles?
In the committee, the youngest lad is 24.
24. So that's very young.
We've got a very young committee.
Yeah.
Because the dynamics here on Sujood are quite. A lot of the elders unfortunately have passed away. So now we've got the elders who are about 60, 60.
Yeah.
That are kind of the elders now, and we look up to as father figures.
Yeah.
So it's quite a young committee. Like I said, the youngest lad is 24, and alhamdulillah.
So this is quite interesting. This is something new. We tend to see quite a lot of these roles, or at least members, tend to be elders, which again there's no problem with. But the one kind of issue that could come from there is a disconnection towards the youth, or people that don't really understand the youth to the extent that they need understanding. So my following point was going to be whether you've thought about having a specific person whose sole responsibility is youth development, or activities focused on the youth, or strictly even a paid role, specifically focusing on bringing the youth to the masjid, or reasoning with the youth to figure out what the problem is with the masjids and why they feel like they can't come to the masjid, things like this. So would that role include this as well?
Yes.
Or
definitely at this moment in time, the role that we've given to this to our imam, it's only a small amount of hours per month, because we don't know how it's going to go. And it's kind of just looking at the community's dynamics, and seeing where we go from there. I can only see good from it, Danielle.
Yeah.
And it just takes away that element of just thinking that I'm just going to come and lead namaz.
Yeah.
A few classes here and there. Because we need to get out on the streets.
Yeah.
And find out exactly what's happening. And that's when you can try and make a difference.
Yeah, definitely. The best way is to if we say why aren't the youth coming to the masjid, for example, the best way to find out is to go speak to the youth.
Absolutely.
The best way, if we mention drug dealers, etc., and whatever people and whatever walks their life from, the best thing to do is to go speak to them, right, and figure out what it is that we can do.
Absolutely.
And giving them the option to share their views as well. So again, leading to my next point is, have you ever had meetings with just the general young community, and had them share their views or points about how they can how the masjids can become better for themselves in the community? Or have you had and I don't mean like sometimes we have these general gatherings where we say youngsters come down, we're just going to chat, but I'm talking more specifically like the actual meetings that take place within the masjid to either create roles or make changes within the system itself, and involving the youth or the community in that sense.
Pre-COVID, like I said, we called these youngsters, called all the youngsters who had left madrasa.
Yeah.
So going back probably like 5-6 years ago, so we did invite them. About 30 of them came, and we touched upon these subjects about what could the masjid do better.
Yeah.
What's important to you guys. And unfortunately, because of COVID and because of our own slackness, we haven't kind of followed it up. But it's something that I think it's needed to find out what they want. What can we do? What is it that they want? Do they want more programs? Do they want residentials. I don't know. We don't know what the answer is, because the common theme is, where are the youngsters?
Yeah.
When you come into the masjid, where are the youngsters? Now here, alhamdulillah, we have youngsters coming in, but it's not enough. Let's be honest. You have the younger generation in terms of 15, 16 plus. Then you've got the individuals who are graduated. So that fikr is always there in terms of how we try and engage with them. How can we use their skills?
Yeah.
Sujood as an area has never had so many graduates.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's to kind of engage with them, work with them, and what can we do better. So I always think that our efforts have to continue, and in terms of trying to engage with them, trying to empower them, and inshallah we'll see the fruits of it.
Inshallah. Yeah. Touching on another point you mentioned as well, then, was the community, right? So I think you mentioned before as well, maybe this was before the podcast, but you mentioned that the madrasa was, before this became a madrasa, it was two houses, right? It was two houses. Just touch upon that, where it came from, two houses, to then where you are now, and how it's progressed since then as well to the position we're in, today.
Yeah, definitely. Historically, there were about 3 or 4 streets.
Yeah.
They were of Muslims, and then as naturally the area seen a massive growth in Muslims.
Yeah.
Before, like the top of Sutil, it was full of Christian folk. But yeah, going back then, there was, like I said, we had 3 rooms, 3 classes, and then I think from about 1995, when they purchased some land and there was a need to build a masjid, this was actually a horse's field.
This was a horse's field.
This whole, the houses and everything, was just a barren field with a couple of horses, and alhamdulillah, the elders, massive, we owe them a huge amount of gratitude, debt to them, because there was no curse on this masjid.
Okay.
No curse.
Wow.
So they kind of obviously saw the need for a masjid, and the area's grown massively then. So before, it was like 3-4 streets where there was Muslims, but now it's grown. And Benny Park Close, and then it's kind of gone from there to kind of top of Sutil, and I'd say there's about a good 1,000 Muslim brothers and sisters.
Really?
Yeah. There's plans for another 300 houses as well.
Is there?
On Sutil. So
it's a big community.
Yeah, it's a big community. Very big
Muslim community.
Yeah, definitely.
And we see now as well, like, it's quite a youthful community as well, and people from all walks of life. We have Arabs, we have South Asian, China. We have all sorts of different Muslims, from different cultures within the community. So in terms of cultures, then again, we tend to fall into this trap of, this masjid is for a certain culture, or this masjid is for a certain culture of so how do we tackle that issue? How do we keep our masjids open, and to be harsh, to be less derogatory, and to clear this it's clear discrimination, right?
Absolutely. One thing is engagement. So the way I see it then is, whenever someone new comes to the masjid, right, first time, second time, you might not get a chance to do mulaqat with them. But I think it's important that as a volunteer or a committee member, or whichever way you wish to phrase it, it's important that you do mulaqat with them. Introduce. I've seen so many people come to the area from London, from different parts of the country, different areas in Batley, Dewsbury. I think the key thing is we have to engage with them. To do mulaqat, I'm here to help you. What can we do as a masjid? Then they'll say, oh, I've got a child. What's the admission rules? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it all comes down to engagement, because it'd be quite easy for someone to come, pay namaz, go home. Come, pay namaz, go home. But in terms of then having a community feel, it becomes there's nothing there. And I think that's the key thing. And it's so important to kind of make someone feel welcome.
So we're speaking about social cohesion, right? And what the masjids are doing to essentially protect this cohesion, and prevent people from different walks of life and cultures feeling neglected, or dissolved from the community or the masjid itself.
I think the masjid holds a key role in this, and the way I see it is, if you look at Sotil, there's so many different people moving into the area. It's hard to kind of keep up.
Yeah.
And that's reality. I think what we can do better is, it's just one method where one individual in each street that is kind of connected to the masjid keeps tabs on who's moved into their street and kind of feeds back. And then that way, we can then go and see that individual or the family, welcome them, maybe take them a hadiyah, a gift, and just advise them of the activities that are going on in the masjid and tell them that we're there to help them, give them contact numbers, that kind of thing. In terms of what we're doing at the moment, so that's something I think we can do a bit better.
Does that happen right now? Like, is there someone, you know, on each, like, okay, maybe not each street, but on a couple of streets where you...
Not at the moment. For example, there was a couple of weeks ago, actually about a month or so ago, I met a brother in the local community centre, and he said, revert brother, he said he's moved up to Sotil with his young child and wife. So I went to see him. It's kind of find and just welcome him and say, look, if there's anything that we can do to help him. Took his contact number, put him on the broadcast list that we've got, so that it keeps him connected to the masjid on that side. I think it's something that the whole community has to take responsibility for. Because people have been living here 30, 40 years, and in that time they've seen a lot of change, a lot of different people coming in, neighbours changing, you know, just different people coming into the different streets. I think the whole community has to play a role in kind of this cohesion. Because if we do that and we show that empathy and that, you know, caring side to our neighbours, then we'll see a difference. We'll see a difference in the locality. We'll create that muhabbat, that love for each other. Because, you know, you can see that decreasing in general, and it's something that I think through these small things that we can do together as a community, rather than just a kind of volunteers, or even tabligh side, then we'll see a difference in the community.
You know, alhamdulillah, that sounds, you know, it sounds amazing, right? It sounds like the perfect world, and but you know, unfortunately, we don't really see this. We don't really see it much, and we even see on, you know, on certain, you know, like recently I was reading a website from a local organization who say the similar things, that, you know, we're all about diversity and inclusion and you know, protection of this, you know, one ummah, one community. But realistically, and the reality behind that, we see something completely different. Now, you mentioned this Riva brother, yeah, who, you know, alhamdulillah, you met him, you know, a gift and all, you know, which is absolutely great. Now, I conducted a little experiment last week, right? I called up, I'm not going to say which masjid, but I called up a local masjid as a Riva, right? Just to gather their interest and their points, you know, on how, you know, how they would respond. And what I said was, I'm newly moved in the community, and I've heard about, you know, madrasas over here, and someone's told me about memberships, right? What is a membership? And you know, can I be a part of this, you know, of this, whatever it is, because, you know, I'm new Muslim, I want to be a part of this community, right? The first response we got was, well, the answer to that question, the first thing mentioned was, where are you from? Okay, fine, no problem. We said, you know, we're British, from the UK. Touching upon that, then the next question was, again, dig a little bit deeper. You know, where are your parents from? We just made something up. I think we said something like Yemen, or something random. And then the next response to that, unfortunately, was and it was sad to hear, but it was, you know, brother, you're more than welcome into the mosque, but this membership is solely for the Indian community. And the reason why, when we asked, okay, what's, why, why that is, the response we got was, it's like having a Polish or an Irish, club that you see. So a couple of things before, I'll let you respond into how your membership, if you do membership, I'm not sure if this masjid does or not and how it works, but a couple of things I wanted to mention before there was the responses we were getting from this individual, and how it can really affect a person's state of mind and belonging to this so-called, one ummah, one community, right? So we have a revert brother who's calling in. He's newly come to the religion. He's most likely come off that vibe of, mashallah, brother, welcome to the religion. We see time and time again when someone becomes a Muslim, we have all the brothers around him, everyone's hugging, everyone's kissing, everyone's enjoying that moment, right? Because, another person has come into Islam, and we give this very, very beautiful, but when you look at it now, sometimes you think fake perception that, there's this big brotherly love and one community and one thing that, and we're all gonna kind of jolly be together, and but when it comes to the reality, this shows what the reality actually is that same brother is, being denied something as small as a membership, which doesn't really mean anything in my opinion, but he's come from that high to then being in a second, pushed away essentially, right? And things like this can lead a person away from the deen as well, right? And we speak about dawah and everything we do leading back to the religion, and every activity or role we play, or any kind of decision we come to always has to kind of reflect upon how it brings a person closer to the deen. But then on the opposite hand of that, we're saying things which is essentially going to push someone away from the deen. So I'll let you respond to that. But you can also, I mean, do you do memberships in this masjid, and how does it, what is a membership? What is it, how does it work?
There's a membership system in the masjid.
Yeah.
But it's a system that we've inherited. So for us to kind of, and I'll be totally honest with you, Dinan, it's something that we are looking into. We're looking into for the last couple of months in terms of finding a decent governance structure so that we can eliminate it.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Now going back to the actual membership system itself, to the 60s, 50s, 60s or 70s, whenever the elders came here, when they established the masjids and the maktabs and whatnot, back then they chose this system. It's similar to a working men's club system and that kind of thing. So they chose this system, and in all honesty, it's kind of served us until now in terms of building up the masjids that we've got in our areas, building up the madrasas as well. So I think it's something that we need looking at, no doubt about it, and it's something that we're actively looking at. We've had dialogue with an alim as well. It's kind of finding a governance structure to ensure that it's fair, because there's different governance structures. That obviously we're a charity, as most masjids are. We're a CIO. You have these model constitutions that you have to follow. So I'm not by any way saying that we're not going to change the membership structure or anything like that. But I think there's room there. There's definitely it's something that we're actively looking at, and I think it shouldn't kind of not detract anyone from being involved in the masjid. That's what I would say. The membership system, what does it give you? If I'm a member and you're not a member, what does it give you? It doesn't give you anything different, to be honest with you, because you'd still have the same service. And if you came into madrasa, you'd still pay the same fees. You could still use the same facilities. Nikah's still the same. So in terms of there's no additional benefit as such. It's kind of for us. It's looking at that governance side and ensuring that's watertight for the future generations to come. And I think that's why, the elders might correct me if I'm wrong, going back to the 50s and 60s when they came over, and that's when this membership system kind of came into play, and it's kind of, I'd say, taken us this far, in terms of building up the masjids and things like that. But now, as you see, different masjids in our area, they have a different structure where there's no membership system, and alhamdulillah, Allah Ta'ala makes the masjid work. Allah Ta'ala puts in the hearts of people to donate, things like that. So it's constantly evolving, and it's, you mentioned that point about a revert brother. You've got you've got more people, for example, Indian lads marrying Pakistani girls, which I think is fantastic. So it's kind of making sure that everyone feels that they're part of the masjid, and I think that it's always that's something that we're looking into. I'll be totally honest with you. It's something that we inherit. What can we do better? And we're looking at it now. We've been looking at it for a while now. And inshallah, we can come to a better kind of constitution, which enables everyone of the same thinking, of the same school of thought, to come under that banner.
You mentioned the benefits between the memberships, right? If there's no benefit in place, then why the need for a membership at all?
Good question. Like here, there's no additional benefits that I have that another person won't have. That we still deliver when we do our timetables and newsletters every quarter. We deliver to every Muslim household. I think it's more about the governance side that kind of needs to be watertight to ensure that there's no problems going forward for the masjid. That's the key thing. And I think we can be better on that in terms of the membership side. It doesn't have to be a membership. It could be as long as everyone's of the same school of thought. But it needs a lot of discussion because I personally can't make that decision. The committee can't make that decision. It's a community decision. So that's where it can be a bit difficult. So when we talk about inheriting a system, to change things, change clauses in constitution, things like that, it can be difficult, Daniel. But I'm not saying it's impossible. So make dua that inshallah we can come to a better structure where if someone does call and says, you know what, I want to be a member, then we can give an answer befitting Islam.
Yeah,
I think that's the key thing.
I'm Pakistani, right? So if I was to make that phone call, then would I be given the same response?
We'd give there'd be a more measured response in the sense that we're looking into it because, like I said, if we inherit a system that maybe it's not fit for purpose at the moment because of the way society has changed. Yeah. But on the same token, what I would say is that it shouldn't put you off becoming involved in the masjid because you might come up with a fantastic idea and say, Suleiman, you know what, I think you should do this, and I'm happy to help you. And it shouldn't put people off because you'd still, the bigger picture is you're still making a difference. You don't need the membership system to kind of make you feel that, you know what, I'm there. So at the end of the day, we all do it for Allah. And your intentions, from knowing you, just talking to yourself, your intentions are always clear. And if you come up with a fantastic idea that benefits the community, the wider community, then why not? It shouldn't put people off. As long as we give a measured response in the sense that, look, there's a governance side behind every charity. Yeah. You have your trustees, you have your office bearers and that kind of thing. Yeah. It's just fine. The ideal scenario, Daniel, would be a central figure just kind of running everything from and then us guys and then that would be the ideal scenario, but it's having that central figure that kind of tells calls all the shots and then doing it that way. But it's very difficult to find, but inshallah I think inshallah we can find something that can kind of eliminate this stigma of membership.
I may have a solution. When Pakistani brother calls, you just say, yeah, no problem.
You're always welcome, Daniel. Any suggestions to kind of do things better, we're always open. We're willing to learn, always willing to listen. It's something that we have to continuously look at. Like everything else, we look at everything. What can we do better? Yeah. This is something I think we can do better.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You mentioned again, just I don't want to go on this particular subject too long, but you mentioned the benefits, right? From what I've heard, and if this is wrong, it's wrong. If it's and correct me if it is, that having a membership gives you access to like burial, ghusl and nikah and stuff, and being a non-member. And to be honest, I have been given from a personal experience of a nikah not being conducted and them having to pay an extra fee. But I don't know if that's something that happens here or as part of this.
I can assure you that we've had people that have used our janazah facilities that are not members, but were musallis of our masjid. The family used it for ta'ziyat. They use the ghusl facilities. The sisters came as well. We don't charge anything. In fact, the kafan and everything is provided free of charge. Same with the nikah. It's a standard fee, which is I think £100 for. If I was to get married again, then it'd be £100. Mrs. will kill me. But £100 standard fee, which is kind of broken down into the imam gets a certain amount, the masjid gets a certain amount. It's standard for me, standard for yourself. There's no added incentive or anything like that. I'll be totally honest with you. We don't charge anything for using the ghusl facilities. So if someone might call me and say, I want to use the ghusl facilities, there you go. There's a kafan. There you go. Use it. That's what it's there for. So even there's no in terms of extra costs or anything. You know, it's just, for example, it's £95 that we pay, then they pay the £95 as well. That's why I think there's room there. There's definitely scope there to kind of change things for the better.
From what you're saying, this membership then really, from the way you're explaining it, and to me it seems like there's no difference whatsoever between a member and a non-member. Then it just makes me think then the idea of someone who's not from that certain culture being denied that it just makes it sound even crazier, because there's no, okay, if there were benefits involved, you could maybe say, okay, you know, that's even, you know, you're denying someone benefits based on their culture. But if there's nothing involved, then to me it sounds like this should just be, you know, abolished, and you know, it just doesn't make sense.
It should be. But then you've got these constitutions that are behind these organizations, different organizations. So these constitutions, they're kind of the legal spiel behind it.
Yeah.
And to change something in a constitution is very, very difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's very, very difficult. Hence why they were written at that time. I think it was more for protection. They were written for protection from different sects maybe coming in and taking over the masjids. I think that's why the membership system was put into place, of that, you know, where people of a certain heritage have to be a member. I think that's why the membership system was put into place. That fear still remains, you know, no doubt, where someone could come in and, you know, dictate and potentially, but there's fears in general anyway in there. So it's like I say, it just goes back to that governance structure, and I think there's room there to kind of look at that and make it so that, you know, we're all one school of thought and it can be better.
Yeah, I think based on this, you know, dictate, I think that maybe that's a step too far. I think we've come quite a long way from there in terms of, in my opinion anyway, you know, this, it's obviously not from yourself, but if this is how the governance is still thinking, and wouldn't you say that's a bit close-minded? And you know, it's time for us to kind of free ourselves from that kind of thought process and
Absolutely.
You know, move forward.
Absolutely. So for example, if you had instances where you might go to a youngster who's turned 18, 19 and say, you know what, do you want to pay a member fee?
Yeah.
Well, often they'll say, no, I don't want to pay a member fee. So because I think it's racist, you know, because they talk to their friends and things like that. And these are the conversations that we've had as a committee as well. So with that it goes behind, again, it goes to what you're saying, that close thinking. We need to kind of we need to think about our youth, because they shouldn't feel disattached to the masjid. We can't have that. Because straight away, if we say you're not a member, then they think, you know what, this is an issue. I'm not a member. I don't feel connected. So it goes back to that thing about them being driven away. So that's why I think it's important that we kind of look like we are looking at it now and seeing what we can do to kind of make it better. And make everyone feel inclusive. Like I said, we've got different people coming from different parts of the world coming to live in Batley, Dewsbury. What can we do better?
Alhamdulillah, it's good to hear that. At least the conversations,
absolutely,
even though I feel like these conversations should have been, you know, taken place at least the last, you know, like the world's progressed so much, but it's good to hear that, you know, some progressive thinking is being taken place, and you know, there is some conversation, at least some conversation being had with regards to this, and you know, it's always a change for good.
No, inshallah. Dua.
Inshallah. My next point, you mentioned again, you know, facilities for sisters, right? I just want to read out something that we saw from a local sister with regards to her experience within our locality, and in terms of the facilities available. Okay, and we'll try to get this on the screen as well. We can maybe edit it in so that the people watching can see. So she says, obviously we're not going to name who this person is. She's tired. You know, I'm tired. I am hurt. I had a few places to go in Batley. It was going to take me, you know, the whole morning, afternoon to complete the tasks. And due to the shorter salah times we have, you know, she had to drive back home to pray her salah, then return back to, you know, completing her tasks. And she says, because despite driving past dozens of masjids, none of them had female praying facilities. At this point, I'm just tired. and all we ask for is a female section, or some sort of shelter, or something just so that they can conduct their day-to-day activities without having to worry about salah, right? And she goes on to say, Allah understands my frustration. She's not alone, and she actually mentions there's one thing that's giving her hope, which is local women doing school rounds to pray salah on the street. And just thinking about that point and pondering upon that point, having local women, it could be our sisters, it could be our mother, it could be anyone, having to pray on the street when there's a masjid, just around the corner, it should really make us think about how kind of backwards that kind of thought is, right? And how we haven't progressed in this specific in this specific matter, considering the amount of masjids we have in place in local, in just in Batley alone, how you can I could probably name 10 on with just my fingers. So salah and facilities for women, then what does Dawatal Islam and this masjid have in place, and is there something in place, like if my sister was walking by and she needed to pray salah, would she be able to come and pray?
I'm aware of that message, and I think I know who it is as well. And I think off the back of that, is it Sujood Space?
Yes.
Came off the back of that, didn't it?
Yeah. I was going to mention that as well. In fact, I'll mention it now. Again, we'll have this pop up on the screen as well, so that they can see, because you've obviously seen Sujood Space, right? What would your expectations be when seeing something like that? Regarding facilities for women to pray, my expectation would be that list should be filled with mosques.
Our name's there.
Your name's there, yeah. Alhamdulillah.
No, what we've always done, Daniel, is when a sister has wanted to use the facilities, to read namaz, they might have been with their husband, they might have been passing, they might have been traveling. A number of individuals who are key holders have always opened up the door for this on the sisters' entrance. How does that?
Do they have to ring up? How does it work?
Well, generally, if it's been at namaz time, if it's been the muezzin or the imam, they've opened the door. There's been no issues. Now, with Sujood Space, it gives that platform where there is a contact number.
Yeah.
It is my contact number because I'm quite local to the masjid, so I'm happy to come and open up. What we can do better is probably put a poster up, put some contact details up on the actual door, so we can be better. So on that side, it's getting better, and our sisters, if they are passing by and they need somewhere to pray namaz, we shouldn't deprive them of them using the masjid. Our position is clear, and it's been for a number of years now. There might have been instances when they might have come to the masjid door might have been locked, which we can't help. Obviously, our fault there is not having a poster or some contact details there. But I can assure you, obviously, we're on Sujood Space. We have ladies' events in the masjid. We have ladies' events in the community centre. It can be better. The ladies' offer should be better. No doubt about it. But it's there. The ladies, sisters can use these facilities. There's wuzu facilities there. And there's a room there. It's locked. Obviously, it's not. You're not going to see any male folk. So there is a facility there for sisters to use. So on that side, it's good. But like I said, the sister offer could be better in terms of empowering them to do more.
Yeah,
it's something that kind of we have discussions about, especially graduates, in terms of recent graduates, where we can utilize their skills a bit better to do more community work. I just think there's a gap there. We have, obviously, you've got your classes and things like that. Different types of classes, tajweed and Sanatain and things like that. But I think the sisters could be empowered to do even more.
Okay, and just touching on empowering them more, then as we spoke about youth in general, we spoke about appointing like a youth coordinator, someone who's kind of focused on just youth in general. Then what about a similar thing for the sisters? Do we have like maybe a sisters committee team or a sisters group whose sole focus is in the empowering the women of our community, or giving them access to the same things that as guys have access to?
Yeah, absolutely. So going back last summer, when we were successful in applying for some funding from this mental health project that we did, so we organised a sisters walk, and about 30 sisters came. and then off the back of that, they build relationships or build networks up.
Yeah.
And they've got their own sisters group now.
Yeah.
So they're doing like monthly. They'll do a fundraiser. There was a janaza ghusl program, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of there's a platform there now for the sisters on Sutil to kind of do things a bit better.
Okay.
Yeah. So in terms of the younger generation, Danielle, the 15, I'd say the sisters have left madrasa, gone to college, gone to university. I still think there's a gap there. The chances are they're probably going to get married soon. So he's kind of trying to tapping into their knowledge of. Yeah, some have kind of graduated in terms of alimas and things like that. What can we do to tap into their knowledge? You know, to kind of use their skills to benefit the community.
Definitely.
I just think there's a gap there. But that younger generation, I just think can do so much more. You know, and I think that's where there's a gap. I think everywhere. You know, all these classes that we have, a lot of the sisters are kind of older, which is brilliant. But there's definitely a gap there that we can try and utilize to benefit.
Yeah, I think we certainly see the kind of general pathway for women tend to be okay, madrasa, fine, great, college, university, okay, but then from leaving madrasa, for a lot of women, usually okay, if they go college, university, that's a separate matter. But then usually it's okay, I'm either gonna get married, or I'm gonna become an alima, do an alima course, and I think we've just kind of stalled on those 2 points.
Absolutely.
But like you said, there's vast skills out there. There's vast knowledge out there within these women. So how do we tap into that? And how do we get those groups more involved? Without just being stale in just okay, either become alima or you get married. I mean, it's a very small way of thinking, right?
Definitely. Similar to what we did with the lads when we called the lads back that I left madrasa. What I think we should do something similar for the girls as well. I think that's something that we're working on. We've had some discussions, very very brief discussions on. I think that's something that we do want to do. So we're liaising with our imams, who've been here a number of years. And a lot of them have kind of prayed by the senior imam. So it's kind of using that avenue to gauge what are their thoughts, what's on their minds, what can we do better for them, what can they do for us. And I think those kind of discussions have to be had really, really quickly, because before you know it, time's going so fast, and they've gone, get married. That's it. They haven't really been able to benefit the community in a way they probably could have, because of the skills that they've got.
We tend to see a lot of things happening for men.
Yes.
Right. We see a lot of whether it's activities or talks or interactive activity, regardless of it, but we tend to see a lot for men, and not as much. And well, we see it now, Hamza. We see hopping and coming up, and I understand that Dawatal Islam as well does a couple of specific women. You did the was it breakfast mornings, or I think it was it the mothers.
We've done tea events.
So how have these kind of these particular activities that you do, have they had a effect on how do women think, how do they feel with having?
I think it's gone really well. It's gone really, really well. The fact that we're kind of every month they're doing something, whether it's in the masjid or in the community centre, whether it's fundraising, whether it's on an Islamic aspect. I think it's brilliant. I think it's growing. My original point goes back to the younger generation, the girls that are in college, university. That's the audience that we want, really, to kind of drive things forward and bring in new ideas and work with these elders. And that's when I think we'll see some benefits. But I think it's growing. It's getting better everywhere. I think it's getting better everywhere, but there's always room for improvement. So and inshallah we'll see it.
Inshallah. Moving on. Let's speak about just general teaching and learning in masjids, and how we can include more into the masjid itself, right? So as we mentioned at the beginning, we have this notion that a madrasa is specific, sometimes solely just for praying, or just for doing your salah, and we should be thinking a bit more wider than that, right? We should be thinking about social issues. We should be thinking about community issues, and the way I see I see a masjid should be a community hub, if you say, yeah, or a local, like a focal point. It should be the center of attention of a Muslim community, whereby anyone, whether male, female, elderly, youth, that has a problem, can come to the masjid and either seek advice, seek knowledge, seek anything, just even for a conversation. Because the best people to speak to are the learned people, right? The people of knowledge, and then in the times of the past as well, anyone who had issues would go to the masjids. When the Prophet ﷺ, when he came to Medina, the first thing he did was open the masjid, right? Because we understand that the masjid is the focal point of our community, of a Muslim community. It's the way our communities move forward and progress. So taking aside the fact that a madrasa is just for or masjid is only for praying, and going back to that point of how we can turn a mosque from that into a community hub. How can we turn a madrasa into something where someone just comes to pray 5 times a day, into something where someone wakes up and think, okay, I've got a particular issue, I'm going to go to the masjid and speak to Imam Sahib, because I'm going to go to the masjid and speak to them about this because I think they can help me with this issue. Because I don't think anyone really has that thought process, because no one really feels confident going to the masjid for these particular issues. There could be reasons where some things are very personal and they don't, but a madrasa should be advertised in such a way where people can feel comfortable to come to the masjid, to speak to the imams, to speak about their issues, community issues. We should have public meetings regarding public matters, or if there's an issue that's taking place that's affecting more than one person, we should be speaking about those in the communities. And what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, totally agree with you, Daniel. Pre-COVID, we even had discussions with Mufti Sahib about having surgeries. About having surgeries in the sense that, for example, if someone had an issue, it could be a marriage issue or anything, then having designated times.
All right, like a doctor's appointment.
Like a doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
So that kind of eliminates that thing about them having no one to talk to, and marketing it in such a way where
anonymous.
If you have any issues, then obviously behind the screen or whatever, taking into account part of their facilities and things like that. So we're thinking of kind of doing that anyway. I think that's something that we can do, and something that we will hopefully do. That's just one aspect in terms of surgery, but I think it goes back from a young age, because the building, most masjids, the building's not used during the day. They might be used during they're used for namaz, they're used for madrasa, but during the day they're not used. So potentially it's something that we could do better, but it goes back to kind of manpower, volunteers, which is kind of key in terms of this, of paying someone, is maybe on a morning having like a stay and play session. So straight away it brings that connection in for that young child who's maybe coming in with a mum. The mum might have some issues. Reaching out to an appa. So that's just one example where I think we could do a bit better. But it goes back to kind of whether we go down the recruitment side or we try and request for these appas or whoever to kind of come forward to kind of do these kind of initiatives. So the buildings during the days, they're not utilised, so we could do better on that, in terms of making it a focal point. Because at namaz times, you could potentially say it's a focal point because people are coming to pray namaz. But during the day, it's not. It's just stagnant. It's an empty space. What can we do to make it better? Is it classes? Is it classes during the day, which I know it happens? Is it regular coffee mornings, not just for the women, maybe for men folk, or some kind of, I won't say a social club because obviously you have to respect the masjid. But having those kind of, so making sure that something's going on constantly. It could be anything. It could be, like I say, a public speaker. There might be a crime, might be a problem. So we'll call the crime commission. We'll call the police. But I think we can do better, without a doubt. Because the masjid should be buzzing 24 hours a day. Obviously at night people go to sleep or whatever. But it should be during the day. I think there's definitely a gap there where the building could be utilised. A beautiful building. Most masjids got so much space. There's potential income there as well. If we do it in the right way. But I think it's something that we can do better.
And we tend to see this quite often where we speak about space and madrasas and newly built minarets and mosques and I would say unnecessarily sometimes as well, because we hear about these um the funding that goes into some of these mosques as well. We're talking sometimes over hundreds and thousands of hundreds of thousands of pounds, where at the end of it we see an empty mosque or an empty masjid, and that money could have been utilized in a much better way.
Yeah,
It could have given
definitely.
someone a role, some of these roles we're speaking about, like a youth coordinator or a ladies a woman's coordinator, or someone who offers counseling, like whether it's marriage counseling or mental health counseling. Imagine the madrasa had the facility for that, and that I think that would be a really good step forward in.
Absolutely. There's so many professionals in the community that work in mental health. There's counsellors in the community. There's benefit advisors. There's social services. There's opticians. There's doctors. The community's got everything.
Yeah.
The community has all kinds of people that you need to kind of help people. But a lot of the times, maybe it's a fault of the committee in terms of trying to empower them. We're not doing enough. But I think a lot of it comes down on the individual as well. That what I've got these skills. What can I do to make a difference?
Yeah.
I think that's the key thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's got to come from there. It's like when we talk about the youth. A lot of the times the youth kind of just got shafted away by the parents, and then that's it. And then we're kind of babysitting. But the parents have to take an active responsibility as well. Making sure that they're okay. The welfare. Having that connection, maybe coming to masjid with them. So it's kind of a whole community approach.
Yeah,
and I think, and then we'll see the fruits of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think this essentially it should be a holistic approach, right? You wanna pinpoint and target each person. And again, you mentioned parents, and the parents have a very big responsibility into like we mentioned youth, for example, right? And why they may feel disattached. Maybe their parents never took them to the masjid. Maybe it wasn't instilled within them. So again, activities, interactions with parents as well, and specific focus on the parents as well, so that the next generation or the next generation of parents don't fall into the same Okay, alhamdulillah. Back to the point of imams then, right? And I was speaking about community hubs and utilizing the imams and their knowledge and their skill set, essentially. Because we have a lot of imams who are not just imams. We have imams who are also counselors. We have imams who are have their own specific fields as well, and utilizing them, and having our community coming to speak to them, and and being comfortable in speaking with them. But there have been instances where imams have not been given the same, well, not been given the respect that they deserve. There have been instances where we see the imams not having a say, and again we go back to this committee and the separation between the committee and the imam and the imams, right? The imams are the people with knowledge. The imams are the people who have studied. They're the people who have taken years out of their life to learn the deen. And the deen isn't just how to pray salah and how and how to make wudu, but there's so many different aspects and teachings from there. It's a way of life, right? It's when we learn our deen, our religion itself, it's a way of life. It's the way we live our day-to-day lives. And the best people who know how to the best people who understand this are our imams and our scholars and our teachers. So there have been instances where we see that imams not being given respect, and one instant was without mentioning the name of the masjid or the scholars involved, but again coming back to this idea of membership and and having that in place. Now the masjid itself is free from any debts. There's no, and they don't do memberships at the moment. The incident was a very high level of disrespect to the imams in the sense of being shouting and rudeness and impoliteness in front of the imams, and over something such a trivial matter, over something very very small, something that from the conversation we've had, shouldn't even exist in the first place. So what is actually the imam's role, firstly, in the masjid, and are they involved in the day-to-day matters and running of the masjid, in the masjid, and the decisions that are made, is my first question.
Absolutely. The imams are definitely involved. They're not involved in terms of the day-to-day decisions, in terms of, I'd say we're more kind of administrators on that side, because the imam, obviously, he's the lead. If there's an issue that needs resolving and needs, further clarification, then the imams would definitely be consulted, without a doubt. It's just kind of etiquette, really, because we've got imams here that have been here 25 years, 15 years. So recently employed another imam. So it's etiquette, really, to kind of treat them with respect and dignity, because they've been here longer than us.
And it's not an isolated incident.
Yeah.
We hear time and time again, certain imam has been kicked out, or certain imam has, because of, again, small matters, maybe disagreements between the committee and the imam itself. So do imams, in terms of day-to-day responsibility, and then why isn't it that imams are not given the day-to-day decisions or responsibilities in terms of the actual decisions that happen in what goes on in the masjid or community itself?
I think day to day, realistically, Daniel, there's not much that goes on day to day apart from the daily namaz and things like that. Going back to my original point in terms of, obviously, the masjid will continue with namaz and whatnot. What we do is kind of look to see where we can make a difference. So if there's something, an area where we can do, what we can do is and make a difference to the community, then we'll run it by our imams and say, look, this is what we're thinking. What are your thoughts? In the same token, if we want to have a guest speaker, say, look, this is a guest speaker. What are your thoughts? And we'd seek their mashura and basically take it from there. But in terms of day to day, to be honest with you, Daniel, there isn't much, because you've got your trivial issues. You got musallis coming to you saying this is not right, that's not right. Sometimes we'd go to the imams and say, what, this person said that, but generally, unless day to day the masjid kind of just functions in itself, it's kind of, what can we do to make a difference? What can we do to make it better? What more activities can we do? That kind of thing. So even now with Ramzan coming up, we've sat down and discussed what we need to do, what we're thinking. So we have regular discussions with the imams now. Something that we've got better on, or we can still be even better, to try and make sure that their needs are also, the household needs, looking after them on that side, and also looking after the masjid and the community as well. So it's about having that regular dialogue and making sure that, everything's kind of looked into.
No, alhamdulillah. What advice would you give to other masjids and other madrasas in terms of just, I guess, everything we've spoken about, more specifically the things that we, I maybe disagree on, such as, membership, such as women's facilities, such as, because from our conversation, these are things that you're tackling. These are things that you're actively speaking about and working towards, which is very good to see in especially in our community, where some would say many organizations are quite close-minded. So it's good to see that we have an open mind here, and that there is progression taking place, and there are things being done to kind of face these issues and find solutions, right? So what advice would you give to other organizations and madrasas in terms of what they can do as well?
I think firstly, every single masjid committee, they do a fantastic job, because it's all volunteers. They're putting their time in. So first, I'll accept everyone's efforts. I think that's the key thing. I think it's kind of just constantly looking at how the world is evolving, and taking into account the needs of the youth, which has been a key focus of our discussion. And looking at how they're seeing things, because they're the future. We've got to kind of make sure that they have the skills. They feel that they're going to take the reins from the elders one day, you know. So it's kind of listening to all sections of the community, not just kind of your mates and that kind of thing. Listening to all sections of the community, seeking mashura with elders, with imams, and kind of just doing your best to kind of get on with everyone. And I think that's the key thing. And I think one of the things that we fall back on is working with other networks, you know, working with other agencies that they're desperate, Danielle, you know, these mental health charities and various other carers groups and things like that, desperate to work with our community. But I just think that sometimes we're not open enough to kind of work with these organisations. For
Why
example,
do you think that is?
I don't know, man. I don't know. We've been successful in applying for a grant, you know, for some bikes.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
You know, the whole focus is to kind of help people, you know, if they want to use it, go out, bit of fitness, you know, that kind of thing. But I don't know why that is. I think it's something that there's a few other agencies are kind of trying to work on. But, you know, working closer together, I'm sure we can learn things off different masjids. You know, some people's strengths are madrasa, some people's strengths are outreach. I think a shared approach would be good. But it's kind of just constantly looking at ways trying to do better. You know, I think that's the key thing, because it can become stagnant. Everything can become really stagnant, and got to constantly try and do things differently. Recruiting volunteers is difficult. It's just always trying to do things better, because we'll have one event, then we'll be thinking, what's the next event? You know, we can't just sit like on Saturday we had the Hifz completion program. It was packed, but now we're thinking, you know, what's the next one? You know, where we can try and get everyone in again and have a really good atmosphere. So it's just constantly trying to improve. That's the key thing.
Alhamdulillah. You mentioned things like, you know, involving other organizations and youth, and again, one of the key topics or subjects of today was the youth. And alhamdulillah, we have the Dailynaseehateam, who again, I don't think many of them are youth anymore, but they're still
quite young, isn't he?
He's I think he's pushing his 30s now.
I thought we're 40.
Yeah, he's pushing. He's pushing, but we still have some members of the team, you know, and with a very good connection to our local youth as well. So you know, the team and the volunteers are, you know, more than happy, and you know, to support. And
the seed of Dailynaseeha was planted here, wasn't it?
It was. There was. You know, I was trying to find a way in how to bring my personal experience into, you know, it was actually here, you know, Dawatal Islam, where I made that where that switch, you know where it occurred, where you know where it all began essentially for myself. It happened over here, and you know I mentioned, you know, feel welcomed, or you know, certain youth say that they not feel welcome, but you know, over here I did feel welcomed. You know, I was welcomed by the imams, by the even by the elders within the masjid. You know, it was a welcome atmosphere. So it's not as if that this is impossible. You know, it is very possible. And you know, like I said, my personal experience began over here, and I was a youth at the time as well. And you know, coming in, even at that time, coming into the masjid, you know, to stay over was a very hard task. But it was, you know, with the efforts of the friends around me, and our teachers, again, you know, our scholars, who pushed us to be able to make those steps, and then on top of that, to keep on top of us, you know, going forward. So I would probably say, you know, if you do, you know, if you are, you know, trying to connect with the youth, you should never just, you know, be like a one-hit wonder. Like, you know, okay, we call them in for 1 week, and then couple of months it's absolutely dead. The youth are, you know, needy people essentially. You know, they're very needy people. They need, and the attention span is, you know, for the youngers as well, it's not massively great, but they like to interact and to be constantly be given even leadership, you know, even given tasks and skills. Give them to the youth, and you know, bring them in, give them, you know, specific tasks. You know, if there's a particular event that's going to be taking place, let's say, you know, a youth day, a youth night, you know, maybe call upon some volunteers from the local community with that age group to say, look, we want you guys to take care of this task. We want you guys to, handle this event. And it's a way of, bringing them, involvement and,
No, absolutely. What I would say is that these youngsters that we've kind of carried over from last year, they're always there at the events. They're willing to help out. So alhamdulillah, we're seeing that, and it'd be good to work with Dailynaseeha, on some projects as well. If Yahya would allow it, whether he will or not, I don't know. But just on another note, obviously the council are putting a lot of emphasis on youth services as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of money going to be pumped in. Okay. So I would say is for the masjids to kind of tap into that.
Yeah, definitely.
They're going to put in a lot of money because the youth service got abandoned. Definitely. They're putting a lot of things back in. So this year there's going to be a lot of opportunities for masjids to kind of try and get that get funding or work with partners to kind of benefit the youth.
From what I've heard, there's a lot of funding in many of these mosques already. In terms
it should
of
be used. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
It should be used for the right purposes, without a doubt. I'm aware of that, but wherever we can try and benefit the community, and if we can train our, if our imams or members of staff want to kind of do some counselling, this is just one example, we'll happily fund it. Why not? They're our staff. We want to kind of make sure that they're skilled to deal with any inquiries that come. I just think that's a standard thing, to be honest with you, Daniel. I think why not? Counselling or any other courses, or if we can get some equipment to kind of help the youngsters, or the women folk, or even men, then why not?
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Just to finish off, then, what plans what plans do you have for the masjid in the next 5-10 years? Are there any specific projects in place that you're thinking of, or where do you see yourself in the next 10 years in terms of progression, and and inshallah we will all still be alive to witness this as well, but where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
The first thing is, Daniel, that Allah take work from all of us, continue taking work from all of us. That's the key thing, because I've seen so many people kind of come in and then they've gone, and that's it. You'll have seen it as well, so I make dua that Allah Ta'ala keeps taking khidmat from us, from me, from you guys as well, because you do a great job. In terms of the future of the masjid, as I mentioned, there's going to be 300 houses built on Sutil, near the top end. Yeah. So, I think one of the key things is we need something there. We need a musalla or something there. I think it's been touched upon before, but I think if it was all one, keep it under this umbrella as Dawatal Islam. It's going to be difficult, no doubt about it, to find something. But I think that's something that we need to look at. We need to look at addressing. Just continuing what we're doing on a more consistent basis with the youth, with the women, and just seeing where we go from there. There is a fear. I've got fears in terms of, obviously, the musallis. When you come in sometimes in namaz, there isn't a lot of musallis, so that is a worry. And I think that's a worry across the board. Because of the way the world is heading. Just got to continue trying to make effort, just save ourselves from becoming despondent. If we do something and there's only a couple of people there, never get disheartened, just continue doing it, and Allah Ta'ala give us istiqamah to kind of continue doing it for as long as we die, to be honest with you. That's the aim. Yeah.
Is Dawatal Islam on social media?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and Instagram, Twitter, what are you guys on?
Everything.
Everything. So do you guys post quite regularly as well?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was, again, social media is a huge platform right now, and especially if you want to connect with the youth.
Our lads, alhamdulillah, like I said, good team behind us. We all work together. Like I said, there's youngsters involved as well, so they kind of manage the social media, and everything's kind of pretty much on there in terms of what's going on. So it's pretty active.
Inshallah, we'll give a little shout out on the
please
video
do.
to your social media handles as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'll give a shout out to the whole community. Alhamdulillah, Allah keep everyone well. Been through a tough time with COVID.
Definitely.
So we're just kind of coming out of that. Got Ramzan coming up.
Yeah.
Inshallah, we'll be praying Tarawih together. We'll have iftari.
Yeah.
So it looks positive, but
we're gonna get an invite to a specific Daily Nasiha iftari at the masjid.
Why not? Is Yahya treating?
I think the brother's low on funding at the moment.
Right. We'll treat you then, inshallah. We'll treat you.
We'll use that council funding.
Why not? Why not? Inshallah.
Okay. Jazakallah khair, Sulaiman Bhai. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and again, thank you for coming to speak with us on the podcast. We ask Allah to forgive us for any wrong that we said, and to accept any good that's come from us as well. Inshallah, we hope to speak to you again maybe one day, maybe in the next 10 years when we've seen this big progression. We can maybe speak again about how the masjids have progressed.
Inshallah.
Okay. Any last words?
No, just Jazakallah again for giving us the opportunity to have a discussion like this, and let Allah accept your efforts and the team's efforts as well. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah khair, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.